Let's dive right into this explainer, because today we're going to radically shift how we look at business. Too often we just picture a company as this isolated, standalone machine, solely focused on churning out profits. But the reality? Well, it's far more complex than that. Today, we're going to explore the business as a dynamic, living entity that has to survive within a massive, incredibly complex ecosystem. And trust me, understanding this ecosystem isn't just some academic theory. It is literally the ultimate survival skill for managing any business today.
So here's our agenda for today. We're going to break down the core of business, look at uncontrollable external forces, explore the economic and non-economic dimensions, see what happens when we expand across geographic levels, and finally, dive into the business environment interface. Starting with Part 1, the core of business. Okay, let's start with a foundational pivot about what a business actually strives to achieve in the modern world. There's this old myth out there of pure profit seeking. Traditionally, the idea was that the primary goal of any firm was simply to maximize profits at all costs. But as society has evolved, pushing for pure, unchecked profit has increasingly been viewed almost as a social sin, with those doing it branded as profiteers. The modern reality is way more nuanced. Today, businesses absolutely have to focus on the optimization of satisfaction. Don't get me wrong, a business still needs to earn a profit to survive. That is non-negotiable, but it has to do so while fulfilling societal norms and expectations. Achieving that delicate equilibrium, that is the modern manager's primary objective. Moving right along to Part 2, uncontrollable external forces. To really understand why adaptation is such a crucial survival skill, we have to look outside the walls of the business itself. Imagine trying to steer a massive cargo ship. You don't control the wind, and you certainly don't control the waves. Well, that's exactly what managers face every single day with these external forces. No firm, no matter how rich or powerful, can directly control its external environment. Everything from a company's big picture policy down to its daily strategy implementation is dictated by these uncontrollables. To succeed, a manager has to be an absolute master of observation, forecasting changes to minimize risk in a highly unpredictable sea. Which brings us to Section 3, economic and non-economic dimensions. These uncontrollable forces we just talked about, they basically fall into two deeply intertwined buckets. First, we have economic factors. These are your highly measurable things, stuff like the income levels of a population or the economic system itself, whether you're operating in a free market, a centrally planned state economy, or a mixed system. But then you have the non-economic factors. These are less tangible but equally powerful: the history, the culture, the sociology, political systems, and legal structures. Both of these represent massive realities that a business has to navigate every single day. But here's the thing, you can't just separate those two buckets. They create incredibly interdependent realities. A shift in a non-economic factor, like political stability, directly alters the economic playing field. Think about it. When a political environment is stable, businesses feel confident, right? They take risks, they expand, but when it's unstable, uncertainty just freezes investment completely. The ideology of whatever government happens to be ruling can dictate your tax laws. And statutory controls over licensing, pricing, or labor, those directly shape where a business can even physically locate. As a manager, your strategy is completely at the mercy of this political economic gear shift. Now for Section 4, expanding across geographic levels. Let's act like a camera for a second and zoom out. A business cannot afford to be point-centric. Even if you're operating in one specific city, you can't just close your eyes to what's happening everywhere else. Your survival depends on actively scanning the environment across three expanding geographic spheres: the regional level, the national level, and the international level. Starting right at the local, regional level, your environmental analysis has to be incredibly specific. A manager simply cannot use a copy-paste strategy here. A practice that brings in massive revenue in one region might completely flop in another. For example, navigating the distinct social habits, festivals, living styles, and customs of North India versus South India requires entirely different approaches. The cultural and economic vibe changes dramatically across regional lines. Zooming out even further, we hit the national and international levels. Thanks to information technology, the world has literally shrunk into a global village. And that means absolutely no local business is immune to international shockwaves. A political showdown or an economic hiccup in Tokyo or New York can instantly impact the Delhi Stock Exchange or totally disrupt local supply chains overnight. A modern manager has to keep one eye on their local customer and the other fiercely locked on that global horizon. Finally, let's look at Section 5, the business environment interface.
So, how do a business and its environment actually interact? Well, it is very much a two-way street. On one side, when private businesses ignore their social responsibilities, the government steps in. They'll enact things like the Consumer Protection Act or anti-monopoly legislation like the MRTP Act to check corporate power. On the flip side, the sheer physical scale of large businesses fundamentally alters the natural environment, which then prompts governments to enact strict conservation laws to protect resources. And as societal standards shift, corporate culture and business ethics are forced to adapt. It's this constant, ongoing game of push and pull.
The relationship is definitely not a straight line. It is a continuous, dynamic loop. The business affects its environment, and the environment, in turn, brings about profound changes in the business strategy. It's just like a circle. There is no definable starting point and no ending point. Recognizing this endless loop is absolutely crucial for any manager who wants to be proactive rather than just reactive. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this one provocative question to chew on. If the business and the environment exist in this endless loop of mutual influence, who is really holding the reins? Are today's massive global corporations simply adapting to the unpredictable forces of our world, or have they grown so large that they are now the primary forces shaping the environment we all live in? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and keep questioning the world around you.